road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so many times we'll think like, oh, I'm an integrous person, I'm an honest person, but yet we don't even recognize that we're lying to ourselves and lying to others multiple times a day. You're saying the thing and not following through, or your words and actions aren't aligned, whatever happens to be. And again, we can't change if we're not aware of our patterns. If your core value truly is a core value, you're willing to walk away from anything to honor that, no matter what's happening. It's got to cost you something. Otherwise, it's not a core value. It's an affirmation list. I want my word to matter. I want today who I am as a man, that when I say I'm going to do something, you can count on it. Like there's no question to it. At the end of the day, it's like words and actions align. And it's not about perfection. I'm not perfect. But today, when I say something, I almost always follow through on it. I say no way more than I say yes. Welcome to the Burn Up Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Nugent. I want to talk about values and really distinguish and differentiate between things you value and ultimately really deciding what are your core values, right? So think about that. What do you value? A lot of people, standard answers, right? Family, freedom, wealth, integrity, honesty, loyalty, strength, physical health, whatever it happens to be, right? And so many times the things that we value are actually passed down to us, right? Whether that's from, how we were raised, from religion, from the government telling us what we should value, what's important to us. And I'm here to tell you that the way that you can distinguish between something you value and what's actually a core value, what is the price you're willing to pay? Or better said, a core value is there is a cost by living it and embodying it. So hold that there for a minute. And I'm going to give you several examples. So much of the work that I do with men, and the very first things that we do when I'm working with a new client is we actually dig into this. It's like, what do you value? What's really, really important to you? What are your core values? And I'm actually fascinated that a lot of times people don't know what they are, or many times they have a particular value or something they want to value. It's a wish list, it's an aspiration, but they don't necessarily live that. And so, believe it or not, one of the greatest ways to be able to determine what your core values might be is actually noticing what pisses you off and what triggers you in other people. So when somebody is showing or demonstrating a particular behavior or showing up and it just triggers you every time you see it, maybe it's just in one person, maybe it's in multiple people, that is triggering something inside of you, that there's something that you truly, truly connect with it, right? So for example, one of my core values today is accountability. It's a core value. And I want to be accountable in every part of my life. For those of you that know me, for those of you that follow my podcast and my teachings and everything that I do on social, you will hear me talk sometimes at nauseum about accountability and the importance of it. I think accountability is freeing. It can be painful at first, but being able to work through it and just being able to accountable for everything in our life. Like there is a freedom in there that I cannot begin to articulate if you have not really stepped into that. And when you can take full responsibility for who you are and for every decision you've made, it is freeing. And so when I notice people saying certain things and not following through or making excuses or pointing the fingers, it is triggering to me. And in some cases, in some people, it just like, I can't even be around them. And what I've found, and I was this way for many phases of my life, it's like, you're not even aware of it. You're not even aware of it, that you're saying the thing and not following through, or your words and actions aren't aligned, whatever happens to be. And again, we can't change, we can't shift, we can't pivot, we can't upgrade, we can't level up if we're not aware of our patterns. Much of what we do throughout the day is literally, we're just kind of on autopilot. We're repeating patterns and beliefs and stories. And so many times it takes something to disrupt that to where we actually have awareness. That's why I'm such a huge advocate for having, once you actually determine what your core values is having an accountability partner that can reflect back to you and check you, when you aren't in alignment and when you don't recognize it. And so I said earlier, many times the values that we our wish list or things that we really value are on there because maybe society has to set it or it's been handed down to us. I'll give you an example. So one of my very first clients that I worked with, we were running through this exercise and I asked him, I said, what's your number one priority? And he said his family and being a father to his kids. That was his number one priority. So I kept pushing him like, are you sure? He's like, yep, that's number one for me. That's why I'm doing all the things I'm doing. This guy's a business owner, and the stress and the weight of all of that. And so as I kept digging deeper with him, we started to look at like, really, where does he put his time? Or better said, where are his actions? Do his actions support that? What he just stated is his core value. His number one value is basically being a father, showing up for his kids. And so as we dug deeper and deeper and deeper into it, this particular gentleman was somewhat strained from his teenage children, didn't know what to do with them. There was a lot of discord, a lot of resentment on both sides of it, and frankly, spent little to no time with his children. He was always working, constantly working. And so then I pushed back on him. I said, well, based off your actions and based off, how you're showing up in the world, if you just look at that, your kids are not number one. In fact, they're way down the list. And he was struggling even sitting that. And I'm like, so what if you just said work, your career is your number one priority? That's what you value more than anything. And, and this was a deeply religious person, his deep religious theology and what he believes in is rooted in family. And he couldn't even say it. And so I kept pushing on it. And I'm like, it's okay. I said, why? I get that you want to show up for your kids. But the truth of the matter is your actions and the way you're showing up does not show that you value, or better even said, that your core value is that of being a fatherhood or family. And it was so uncomfortable for him. We just kind of changed the subject. And, and sometimes I learned like you can only push someone so far, but that struck a wound. And so for you, as you're listening or watching this, a question to ask yourself is like, whatever you view or see as your core values, does your calendar back that? Do your actions back that? There has to be a cost associated with it. So for example, if you've got, let's say you're a business owner, and you've got something set up, we'll use the same thing as a father as an example. You've got a meeting, you've got dinner and you're taking your son to a game. Right? It's been planned, it's on the calendar, and then you have your biggest client or a potential new prospect that you're going to make a shit ton of money from. All of a sudden reach out and they say, hey, the only time I can meet is tonight at 5, and you're supposed to pick up your son at 5:30. So, and then let's say it's a prospect says, you know what, I can't meet for another month, or I don't even know if I can meet. It's either now or never, right? Giving some extremes here. That's when you actually really know if your core value is actually, in fact, a core value, because it has to cost you something. And so if family or fatherhood, let's say it was my client that was going through this, he would have to look at this guy and say, you know what, I already have a conflict with my son. And if the prospect pushed back, it's like, I would love to do business with you, but my son comes first. Your core values, when pressed, when there's pressure, will cost you something. That's when you know it's a core value. Core values also help determine what boundaries you're willing to put for others, right? They're rooted in core values. They're rooted in like non-negotiables. Core values are non-negotiables. And you can have something that might be something you value or even a core value today, and you can change. So just because you value something today, there might be seasons for something else. For example, if you're trying to lose weight and get in shape and you've got, a race coming up or a trip or whatever that you're really pushing through. And so in that season of your life, your health becomes a core value, becomes a non-negotiable. You're willing to not go out, not eat this, not drink that, whatever. That can be seasons for that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to know what your core value is, it's something that it will cost you something. It will cost you something. The one, I just recently did a podcast with a gentleman on this, and another one that's on the forefront of me that I notice all over the place is the core value of integrity, which is one of mine. And in full transparency, I might have said that that's it, but the reality was like I wasn't living that way. I've spent seasons of my life out of integrity. I know both sides of it and the pain of it, not only how it affected me, but affected other people. I value that so much, and the work that I've done personally, that is a non-negotiable. Like I cannot violate that value for me. And it's not about perfection. I'm not perfect, but today who I am as a man, when I say something, I almost always follow through on it. I say no way more than I say yes. And I built guardrails, if you will, around me. And what I mean by that is I have people in my life that are close to me that I have asked, if you ever hear me say something and not follow through with it, I want you to check my ass. I want you to tell me. And I have people in my life that tell me straight up, and sometimes it's painful. But I can tell you today that I have people checking me less than ever because I value it so much, and I don't want the sting of it. I don't want the sting of it. And so many companies will say, hey, we're integrous. We follow through. Like companies, and it becomes a marketing word. Our company is founded on integrity and honesty or whatever it happens to be. But there's layers to that. There's layers. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And ultimately, integrity, for me, the definition of it is words and actions are aligned, period. And so it might sound cold, but if you're, it's late at night, you're tired, exhausted, and you've told yourself, let's say you haven't even told anybody that you're going to get up and work out in the morning, and you don't get up, no matter how tired you are, no matter what's happened, you're actually out of integrity. You said you were going to do it and you didn't follow through. So you can be integrous in a business situation that's like, we signed this contract, you follow through, and it's like, yep, integrity, but how deep are you willing to let it go? You could say it's something you value, but if it's a core value, that value will run in all pillars of your life, in business, in life, in marriage, friendship, as you show up as a father, whatever. It's like, that is a core value. It becomes a non-negotiable. That when you stick to it, many times there is, as I said earlier, a cost, but there's pain, like potentially losing something, whether it's money, whether it's love, right? I think for me, in my marriage with boundaries and in relationships post-divorce, right, there are many things that I valued, but I would actually not reinforce, or I wouldn't speak my mind because, I didn't want conflict. I didn't want there to be friction. I'm going to go with the flow. I don't know if you're familiar with Clifton Strength Finders. It's a list of, I can't remember, 40 or 50 different things. And my number one thing at the time, I need to redo this test. I don't know if it'd be this well today, but my number one strength was adaptability, which there's some incredible things that are on that. There's also a negative side to it. It's like, oh, I can go with the wind. I'm easy. I'm going with the flow. I used to go with the flow all the time with a lot of people, but the truth of the matter underneath it was a deep insecurity for me. It was really difficult for me to say no to people. And if you peel all the layers back as to why I left my investment firm, at the core of it, you get to the very, very core of it, it's because I couldn't say no, because my worth and identity was tied to other people. And the other way of saying that is I was not even cognizant or aware of it, but I was self-betraying many times on a daily basis, many times throughout a single day. It's just the way I move through the world. And so, so ultimately when we say we're going to do something, we don't follow through, that we're self-betraying. When we have a core value, the gap between what we say we value and our actions, if there's any gap where they're not aligned, we're in self-betrayal. And it's being able to recognize it. And when we do recognize it, it's an opportunity, really, frankly, to be like, okay, retest or test the core values that you state are so important. Maybe they're not. Maybe that's just something you value. Maybe it's an affirmation. Maybe it's something that I hope to be. Every time I have a client, I have one right now, for example, when he stated, he goes, integrity. And I literally push back. I'm like, you realize what you're saying, the cost of actually doing that, of saying that, of living that. And I kept pushing back. For a couple of weeks, I'm like, I want you to sit with this because I want you to know what you're saying yes to. Because if this is a core value, you got to understand. And in the role that I play as an accountability partner, I'm going to push you and challenge you on the littlest things, And I can tell you overall, he's doing it, but the pain and the cost associated with that, it has been in some ways very overwhelming for him. Extremely. I've had clients in the past that were integrity. It's number one. It's my number one. It's my number one. And their words and actions are so not aligned. The empty promises. It's just like it cascades all over the place. It's just words and actions are not aligned on a daily basis, but yet not even aware of that, how they're showing up. Because many times when we say integrity, we put it on really big stuff, right? It's the big thing. Like in a marriage, like integrity is like, cheating, betrayal. It's like, I didn't cheat. She can trust me, but like every single time you said you're going to take the garbage out but didn't follow through, boom, you're out of integrity, right? Trust is built off the little things and where words and actions are aligned. And so many times we'll think like, oh, I'm an integrous person, I'm an honest person, but yet we don't even recognize that we're lying to ourselves and lying to others through multiple times a day. And there's layers to this. If you walk into a Starbucks, for example, and you're having a shitty day and you're in pain, and the barista says to you, hey, how's your day? I mean, what do we mostly say? I'm good. I'm great. I'm okay. What if you looked at the barista in the eye and just said, I'm having the shittiest day. I'm a mess right now. And watch how they react to it. Because many times people say it, we say it, how's your day? Good, fine, whatever, right? It's just like it's on autopilot, these standard canned answers. How freeing would it be just to be able to tell somebody like, I'm a complete mess today. I've done this because I want my words and actions to be aligned. And many times they don't know what to do with it. Didn't expect that answer. Well, then don't ask. And I used to do the same thing. How are you? What's up? If somebody wasn't feeling well, then it kind of triggered me. It's like, and then I felt like I had to fix it versus letting somebody just have their experience, And so I think it's really, really, we notice this today in the media, specifically in politics and religious institutions, where in religion, they're at the pulpit saying the things, do this, right? And then many times we'll see that these particular people that we look up to, we put on pedestals, right, are not following through either individually or the corporation or the institution itself, says one thing and does another. We see this in politics, right? We people are lying constantly to us, right? So it's everywhere. Like, what's even real today? What's even real? And so we see it all over the place, right? And so we get triggered by it. But then the opportunity is, and where the work is then flipping the switch, or more importantly, flipping the mirror back to you. It's like, okay, where am I out of integrity? Where am I not following through on my core values? I say fatherhood is my number one. Am I really showing up as a dad that way? I say my health is a core value, but am I only eating healthy half the time? 60% of the time? Not at all. When I was morbidly obese, like I valued my bodies, my action, eating, whatever, like all the behaviors or stuff. Like I value people that were healthy. Like, so there could be an argument that, yeah, it's a value, but like the way I was living, not at all, because I wasn't willing to do it. It's got to cost you something. What are you willing to give up to honor your core value? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? Because you will get tested. And the tests are gifts, right? And there will be multiple opportunities. Same with me, right? There's moments where I say I'm going to do something I forgot or whatever happens to be, right? And it's like I let it sting. But it matters so much to me, right? That I'm so cautious with what I say yes or no to. And almost every night I can go to bed feeling, no matter what happened at the end of the day or during the day, it's like I fall through on what I said I was going to do. It pushes me. I'm pushing myself. I become my own accountability partner. And in the space that I'm in as a coach and consultant, and more than anything, a guide for the men that I'm working with and will work with, I am not going to call a man up or hold him accountable if I'm not doing it myself or have done it. I won't do that. There's too much of that out there. Do what I say, but not as I do. I think we're all sick of this, right? And there's so much fake. And what's real, what's not, all the AI, it's all over. Because at the end of the day, I believe the root of everything it truly is integrity. Words and actions aligned. And the truth will always come out. Always. Even if integrity is not a core value of yours. Another one of mine is authenticity. I want to be authentically me. Now, am I authentically me 24 hours a day? I'd like to think I am. But are there moments where I hold back and not say something, or if I'm in a conversation with somebody, or even here on this podcast or on social, do I hold back sometimes of saying what I really, really want to say? Yeah, that's true. What are they going to think? Or should I say this? Or I'm going to offend somebody? And the social media land's fascinating because, what sells a lot of times, and I'm sure you see this, is really polarizing statements. Just to be polarizing. I mean, there's people that do it. They just want to sit and trigger everybody. And truthfully, from a marketing perspective, it works. I mean, and one could argue that that's somebody being authentic, but I think a lot of people do that just for clicks and likes. Like, see me. I say, I don't want to do that. But yet sometimes I have a very strong opinion about something, and yet sometimes I'll find myself holding back from saying it. So I'm actually betraying myself because why am I holding back? How is this going to be received? Is someone going to take this the wrong way? Right? So there's opportunities for me to lean into that. So it's a core value of mine today, because a lot of my life, I was wearing a mask. You'll hear me talk a lot about performing, managing conversations, how people are going to see me. And it's exhausting. I don't want to do that anymore. So it's really, really freeing just to be me and to not agree with everybody. And what I found for me more than anything is I just don't say anything. I'm more quiet than I've ever been. I have big energy. I can light up a room. I can suck the energy out of it. But I become much more of an observer. I actually sit and pause, and then I check, like, is this worth saying to it? And many times I want to say something, but you're like, you know what? It's not worth it. And there have been times where I've said something that I know was spot on. I'm not saying this from an ego perspective, spot on, and it triggered the other person. And for me personally, letting somebody be triggered and have a whole experience around it, but not let it affect me, has actually been freeing. In some ways, this is new to me. Because if somebody was uncomfortable, I was trying to fix it. I had this, I was trying to be everybody's savior and, make everybody feel comfortable. But the truth of the matter is I was just trying to make me feel comfortable, not them. Because again, we have no control how anybody reacts to anything we do. The only thing we actually have any control over is us. So when you look at, again, coming back to what I asked you at the very beginning, look at your values. What do you value? And do your actions match that? And spend some time with this, because I believe, foundationally, you can call it what you want. The way I articulate it is, as men and women, foundationally as humans, if you will, there are 5 components or 5 pillars, if you will, or 5 building blocks, and you could say there's more, but this is just the way I articulate it. Is you've got, you have an emotional, mental side of things. You've got a financial block. You've got a relational pillar, if you will, your physical health, and then your spiritual, right? So let's call it 5 blocks. And the reality is, in order to sustain whatever you're trying to build or grow or create in this life, it requires a very strong and solid foundation. And if any one of those particular pillars, if you will, are not being fed, are not being nourished, and you're not putting energy into it, use an example of a building, the building's going to lean. It might not be able to go as tall. You need to plant deep, deep roots. I built a very large financial empire on stilts. The financial piece of it was where my worth and identity was. I was really good at making money, but the other parts of my life were out of whack. I was out of alignment. And what I did during that time is I tried to fill those voids with money. And so it was inevitable that it was going to crash. So foundationally, and many times when there's cracks in the foundation, they have to be addressed. You have to work on them. If you do not address them, and many times the cracks that are forming are lies, betrayals, out of alignment, whatever it happens to be. But the longer you go by not addressing those cracks, whatever you're building will eventually fall. It's inevitable. The truth will always come out, and whatever happens to be. Well, underneath the foundational piece, to me, what drives that and how you show up in the world are, in fact, your core values. What drives that? Like, what do you really value? What matters to you? What 3 or 4 or 5 things matter to you more than anything? That you're willing to pay the price, and even being somewhat dramatic, what are you willing to die for? What are you willing to walk away from, whoever happens to be the closest people, a marriage, family, love, money? If your core value truly is a core value, you're willing to walk away from anything to honor that, no matter what's happening. Now, there's always more that goes into it, but if you get to the core of it, no pun intended with the word core, that will ultimately determine if it's a core value or not. Period. And so, I had a dear friend, I've been friends for 10 plus years. He ended up lying to me about something last year. Hurt. Gave him multiple opportunities to, kind of come clean on it. And finally, it's just like there was a mission that it kind of came through, and it triggered me so badly because I was very open about some things. I felt very comfortable sharing, and he violated that trust. And so I had to sit with that. And so on one hand, hey, people make mistakes, do things, but I gave multiple opportunities. But when it came down to it, I had to look in the mirror and say, Adam, is this a core value of yours or not? And I actually ended up walking away from the friendship. Painful, not easy. And the truth of the matter is, like, there was also some freedom in it because I was honoring my word. I want my word to matter. I want today, who I am as a man today, that when I say I'm going to do something, you can count on it. Like, there's no question to it. And I was the guy that said yes to everything. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll do that, right? I had great intentions, but I didn't follow through on some. And it doesn't mean that I didn't follow through on everything. I followed through on a lot of things, but when it came down to it, there were things that I didn't follow through. And you know the quote, "The road to hell," by Mark Twain, "the road to hell is paved with good intentions." Just because you have the intention to do something and you didn't follow through on it, at the end of the day, it's like words and actions align. And there's levels to this. And again, we can focus on the real big stuff, but it's the little stuff. Did you take the garbage out? You're going to clean your room. You're going to work out. You're going to eat healthy. And ultimately, when you can actually honor your core values, it's about you and you. That's where confidence is forged. When you make a commitment and you follow through, whatever that commitment is. And each and every one of us values things that are different. And that's okay. The society might say one thing, but you get to decide what you value. You get to decide what you value. So for example, let's say adventure. Like, adventure is a core value. Here's another side of it. All right, my son, when I was going through this process with him, he goes, adventure, it's my core value. I said, core value? Okay, so if it's a core value, that means that any trip that you go on, if there's not an adventure piece to it, then it's like, it's not a core value. If you want to go, is sitting on the beach or going golf, is that considered an adventure? So I kept pushing on him. I'm like, you value adventure. You want to have a lot of adventure. But if it's a core value, that means everything in your life is rooted around having an adventure. So again, they're non-negotiables. And, as I wrap this up, it's a shorter one this week, I want you to really sit with that. What do you value? And then go deeper. What are the non-negotiables? What are you willing to fall on your sword for? What are you willing to walk away from? It's got to cost you something. Otherwise, it's not a core value. It's an affirmation list. It's an affirmation list. If honesty, for example, is a core value of yours, and you're a dude that's, married, and you're looking at porn and your wife doesn't know, the porn's not the issue, it's the lie. Don't you dare say that honesty is a core value, because it is not. You want to prove to yourself that it's a core value? Then go have the conversation with her today and tell her. And then accept the consequences, both positive and negative. If honesty is a core value of yours, then you have to look in the mirror. You have to take an inventory of everything that you're doing. And are there places where you're not telling the truth? And if honesty is a core value, you never tell the barista you're feeling amazing if you're not feeling amazing. And if you go even deeper, it's like, are you honest with yourself? That's when you know it's a core value, when you're checking yourself. And when honesty, integrity, loyalty, when you can actually sit in that and you do the work that, and again, once you decide to do it, right, it's not about perfection, but it's about getting there where you're checking yourself. I'm telling you, the freedom that comes from actually honoring those, and especially when it comes to just being able to take the truth and own all of your shit, is freedom. To me, there is no greater freedom than being able to walk into a room where nobody has anything on you that you haven't spoken to. Like, yeah, I've taken ownership in that. And then going deeper, it's like your worth and identity is not tied to it. That's something I did. That's not who I am. Powerful. Powerful. I had no idea what that would feel like. Just being able to be completely 100% transparent and honest about everything. And it took me almost a lifetime of not being honest and transparent about everything. Little lies here and there. Little lies, right? They all add up. Most people, you included, me, most people today aren't even aware of it, where they're lying constantly. Words and actions aren't aligned. So again, if your core value is honesty, loyalty, how loyal are you? Like integrity, whatever, these buzzwords, authenticity, like I'm authentic. I value authenticity. Is it a core value? Right? And if you're not completely 100% you with everybody, then it's something to look at. And again, when you establish what those are, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a core value if you're not living that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the goal, is to get there, especially if you haven't done it before. But I'm telling you, as you kind of lean into that, you get to where it's like, Maybe it's 50% of the time, 60, 70, 80, 90, 95, 96, 97, then it just becomes who you are. Like it's not even in question. And then once you get to that place where you've just embodied it, it's just, maybe it's a core value that lives inside of you, but then there's another value that you actually want to embody. And then that now becomes the core value. And you add on to it, or you take away. Or, hey, I used to really like this, but I don't value it as much anymore. They can change. So again, take an inventory. And if you're not quite sure even where to start, look at what pisses you off, what triggers you. That's a sign. When somebody does this, that means you value the opposite of that. So go there, write them down, honor them, bring people into your life that will help hold you accountable. I'm so turned on by accountability. I think it's men and women. When someone can be truly 100% accountable for the role that they play, I'm so turned on and attracted to that. It's rare. But and I feel like I do that as well as anybody. And I'm attracted to people that live similar lives or value it like I do. And those that don't, I'm completely turned off by it. In many ways, I'm repelled by it. And again, your center of influence, if your core values are one way, but you've surrounded yourself with friends, and I don't care if they're lifelong friends that don't have the same values as you're out of alignment. You are some of the people you spend the most time with. So that's also take an inventory of who you're hanging out with. And if you determine that you have core values that your friend group or even family aren't living, ask yourself this: is it really a core value? Are you willing to walk away? Are you willing to distance yourself? Are you willing to challenge them and say, hey, listen, this is what matters to me. Does this matter to you? If it does, I need to see A, B, C, and D. Otherwise, I'm actually going to have to leave. Are you willing to do that? Because if not, it's not a core value. It's what you're willing to walk away from, what you're willing to say no to, even if the greater the cost, the more you actually know that it's a core value. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me this week on the Burnout Podcast, and we'll see you next time.